When Ryan's parents told me I had to sign a prenup, I felt my stomach twist. They didn't even try to hide why. They thought I wasn't good enough for their son. Sitting in their big marble kitchen, with Margaret's sharp eyes watching every move I made, I felt small. William talked about protecting family assets, as if I was some kind of gold digger. Ryan held my hand under the table and whispered, "It's just paperwork, Em. It doesn't change anything between us." I wanted to believe him so badly. I loved him. We had met in college, back when money didn't matter and life felt simple. But as I stared at the thick stack of legal pages in front of me, it felt like something inside me was breaking. I signed it anyway. My hands trembled as I wrote my name, trying to keep a brave face while Margaret smirked, satisfied. When it was done, I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locking the door before the tears came. That night, Ryan acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead, told me how proud his parents were that I was so understanding. I smiled back, but deep down something shifted. It wasn't just the paper. It was the way they looked at me, the way he let them. I didn't know it then, but that moment would change everything. The girl who signed that paper would never be the same again. After signing the prenup, things between me and Ryan's family got worse. They decided to throw a huge engagement party at their country club. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Crystal lights, fine wine, smiling faces. But I could feel how fake it all was. Margaret kept introducing me to people as the teacher, with that little pause before she said it, like it was something to be embarrassed about. A few guests gave me polite smiles, others whispered behind my back. I stayed quiet, holding Ryan's arm and pretending not to notice. Ryan didn't seem to notice either. He laughed with his parents' friends, telling stories from his firm, acting more and more like one of them. The warmth he used to have was slipping away. A few days later, I got a call that shattered me. My grandmother had passed away. She was the only real family I had left, the one person who always believed in me. Losing her felt like losing the last piece of home I had. Ryan tried to comfort me, but his words felt distant, rehearsed, like he didn't know what to say. After the funeral, I felt empty. I didn't even care about the wedding anymore. I just wanted peace. What I didn't know was that my grandmother had left behind something far more than memories, something that would change my entire life. But back then, all I could feel was loss and the cold space growing between me and the man I thought I loved. A few weeks before the wedding, I got a strange call from a law firm in New York. They said it was about my grandmother's estate and that I needed to come in person. I took the next flight, thinking maybe she had left me her small house or some savings. I never imagined what was waiting for me. When I sat down in the lawyer's office, he smiled kindly and handed me a folder. He explained that my grandmother had been the silent owner of a luxury brand called Reby Group, a company known around the world. I thought I misheard him at first. Then he told me I was the sole heir to everything she owned, including her shares, properties, and accounts. It added up to around $400 million. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I stared at the papers. The lawyer kept talking, but his words blurred together. Tears filled my eyes, not because of the money, but because of what it meant. My grandmother had believed in me so deeply that she trusted me with everything she built in secret. I sat there for a long time, thinking about how proud she'd be. Then I made a decision. I wouldn't tell anyone, not even Ryan. I needed to know who really loved me, who saw me for me, not for what I had. I walked out of that office with a quiet heart and a secret that could change everything. As the wedding got closer, the Prescott family tightened their grip on everything. Margaret called almost every day, giving me lists of things to do and rules to follow. Then one afternoon, she told me it would be best if I moved into their estate before the wedding. She said it would help me learn how a Prescott wife behaves. I wanted to say no, but Ryan insisted it was just for a short time. So I packed my bags and moved in. From the first day, it felt like I was being watched. The staff treated me politely but with distance, as if they were told to. Margaret corrected how I spoke, how I dressed, even how I placed a fork on the table. William gave me lectures about family image and expectations. I nodded, smiled, and said nothing, but inside I was boiling. What hurt most was seeing Ryan change more every day. He spoke like them now, cold, careful, proud. When I disagreed with his parents, he'd take their side without thinking. I started to see that the man I fell in love with was fading, replaced by someone they had shaped. I stayed quiet, pretending to go along with their ways, but I was done being their puppet. Each night, when the house was silent, I wrote notes, made calls, and slowly planned my next steps. I didn't know exactly what I would do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to be their next trophy wife. One evening, we were all sitting at the long dining table. Margaret had invited a few of their family friends, and the air was filled with fake laughter and polite talk. Everything seemed fine until William lifted his glass and said, "Ryan's a generous man. Not everyone would marry a woman without a fortune." The table went quiet for a second before everyone forced a laugh. I just smiled, holding my fork a little tighter, pretending his words didn't sting. Inside, something snapped. I realized then that no matter what I did, they would never see me as enough. That night, when I went back to my room, I sat on the bed in silence. I wasn't going to cry this time. I was done being small, done trying to fit into their world. I picked up my phone and called my grandmother's lawyers. Calmly, I asked them to transfer everything she left me into a private trust under a new name, one no one could trace back to me. From that moment, I started writing things down. Every insult, every cruel comment, every time they made me feel less than human. I kept copies of messages, notes of conversations, and dates of every humiliation. I didn't know yet how I'd use them, but I knew I would. I was patient, polite on the surface, but something inside me had changed forever. They thought I was weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The night before the wedding, Ryan and I sat together in his parents' study, going over the final plans. He seemed different, confident, almost smug. He talked about our future like it was a business deal, explaining how things would work once I was a Prescott. I stayed quiet, watching him, trying to find the man I once loved. But he was gone. Then he laughed softly and said, "At least the prenup keeps things simple. No surprises down the road." He said it like a joke, but it hit me like a knife. That one sentence told me everything. He didn't see me as his partner, just someone who needed to be managed. My chest felt heavy, and I could barely breathe. I realized in that moment that Ryan never really loved me. He loved the idea of control, the feeling of being above me. I excused myself, saying I was tired, and went upstairs. I stared at the wedding dress hanging by the window, the one I had once dreamed about wearing. It looked meaningless now. My hands trembled as I wrote a short note and left it on the dresser. It said, "I'm not marrying into a family that measures love in dollars." That night, I packed my things quietly and walked out of the Prescott estate. The cold air hit my face, but it felt freeing. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. I was finally taking my life back. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls, messages, voicemails, all from Ryan and his parents. I ignored every single one. By noon, there was loud knocking on my apartment door. When I opened it, Ryan stood there, red-faced and furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he shouted. "My parents are humiliated. Everyone's talking about it." I stayed calm. He stormed inside, pacing like a man who had lost control. "You're going to come back with me," he said firmly. "We'll fix this. We'll tell people you got nervous, that it was just a misunderstanding." His voice was full of anger, not love. He didn't care that I was hurt, only that his family's image had been damaged. I walked over to my table, picked up the folder I had been keeping, and handed it to him. It was the prenup, the same one they all made such a big deal about. "You wanted protection," I said quietly. "Now you've got it." He looked confused, then angry. "What does that mean?" he demanded. I didn't answer. I simply picked up my small suitcase, walked past him, and opened the door. "Goodbye, Ryan," I said softly. "I hope you find what you're really looking for." He called after me, but I didn't turn around. I stepped outside, closed the door, and didn't look back. I didn't know where I was going yet, but one thing was clear. I was never going to let anyone own me again. Months passed quietly after I left town. I moved to New York and started using my grandmother's last name, Stone. It felt right, like closing one chapter and opening another. I spent my days learning everything about Reby Group, the company she had built in secret. The more I learned, the more I admired her. She had built an empire with grace, strength, and patience, all the things I wanted to be. During those months, I occasionally saw headlines about the Prescotts. Their business, once known for its stability, was falling apart. There were reports of bad investments, lawsuits, and mass layoffs. I didn't feel joy, just a quiet sense of balance. Life had a strange way of setting things right. Then one morning, my assistant showed me a magazine cover. It had my photo on it, Emily Stone, the mysterious new CEO behind Reby Group's global rise. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't plan to go public, but word had spread fast. That same week, the Prescott family saw it too. According to a former co-worker of Ryan's, the moment Margaret saw my face in that magazine, she went pale. William reportedly muttered, "That can't be her." But it was. The woman they mocked, the one they thought had nothing, now owned more power and wealth than they could ever imagine. I didn't need revenge. Just existing, successful and free was enough. One evening, I attended a charity gala in the city, an event filled with business leaders and public figures. I had gone to represent Arabelle Group, not expecting to see anyone from my past. But as I walked through the crowd, I heard a familiar voice. When I turned, there they were, Ryan and his parents. For a moment, the room felt still. Margaret's face froze before she quickly forced a smile. "Emily," she said softly, her tone polite but nervous. William stepped forward, pretending to be cheerful. "Emily Stone," he said, stressing the new last name. "We were just saying how impressive your company's growth has been. Maybe there's a chance for collaboration someday." Ryan stood beside them, silent, his eyes full of regret. He looked older, tired, like life had weighed him down. I smiled politely, meeting William's gaze. "That's kind of you," I said calmly. "But unfortunately, our company doesn't collaborate with those who undervalue loyalty." For a second, no one spoke. Margaret's smile disappeared, and Ryan looked down. I didn't wait for their reaction. I simply turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The air felt lighter with every step I took. As I left the ballroom, I felt no anger, only peace. I had finally closed the door on that part of my life. They had built their world on pride and money. I had built mine on strength, and that made all the difference. Late one evening, I sat in my office, the city lights glowing through the large windows. On my desk was a framed photo of my grandmother, her warm smile frozen in time. I looked at it for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. The pain, the betrayal, the lessons. For so long, I thought my story was about revenge, about proving the Prescotts wrong. But sitting there, I realized it was never about that. It was about finding myself again, about remembering my worth after letting others make me feel small. I decided to do something meaningful with what she had left me. Within months, I started a foundation under Arabelle Group, one that offered scholarships and mentorships to young women who came from humble beginnings, just like me. I wanted them to know they were enough, no matter where they started. Seeing their faces light up gave me a sense of peace that no amount of money ever could. Meanwhile, the Prescott name slowly faded from the business world. Their company fell apart piece by piece, the same way they had once tried to break me. But I didn't celebrate their downfall. I simply kept building my life with quiet strength and grace. As I turned off the lights that night, I looked at my grandmother's photo one more time and whispered, "You were right, real wealth isn't what's in the bank. It's knowing your worth."